China covers its skyscrapers in full HD LED screens while America builds plain glass boxes, and the reason has nothing to do with taste. Right now, 80% of every LED display panel manufactured on this planet comes out of Chinese factories. 8 out of 10. You heard that right, from the Jumbotron in your local stadium to the billboard above your highway, odds are it was made in China. And that supply chain monopoly is only the first of 4 reasons why no American city has ever come close to replicating what China does to its skyline every single night. But before you understand why America can't build this, you need to see what China already has. The cities that turn their skylines into screens. Start in Shenzhen. You're standing on Lianhua Hill, looking south across the Futian Central Business District. The sun has just gone down. And then, like someone flipping a switch on an entire city, 43 skyscrapers light up simultaneously, not with floodlights, not with accent strips, with over 1 million individual LED nodes embedded into their facades, synchronized to music, running choreographed content across every building at once. The entire district becomes a single screen. You're not watching a light show, you're standing inside a broadcast. And towering over all of it, nearly 2,000 feet tall, the 4th tallest building on the planet is the Ping An Finance Center, wrapped in nearly 340,000 individual LED units. Its facade, running content so sharp you could mistake it for a stadium jumbotron, except this jumbotron is taller than the Empire State Building. But Shenzhen is just the opening act. Move west to Chongqing, a city built on mountains, where the Yangtze and Jialing rivers collide. Here, the light show doesn't cover a district, it covers a geography. Over 200 buildings and 4 cross-river bridges are wired into a single distributed control system, synchronized through IoT technology, making it the largest coordinated LED landscape ever built on Earth. You're watching 2 entire riverbanks communicate with each other in light, the content leaping from one shore to the other, the bridges pulsing in rhythm between them. And because Chongqing is built vertically, skyscrapers stacked on hillsides at different elevations, the display doesn't just stretch wide, it stacks deep. Layer upon layer of illuminated facades, rising from the waterline into the clouds. No flat skyline can compete with that kind of 3-dimensional depth. And yet Chongqing still isn't the most jaw-dropping example. Go east to Shanghai, the Lujiazui financial district. You've seen it in photographs, the Oriental Pearl Tower, the Shanghai Tower spiraling to over 2,000 feet, the World Financial Center with its bottle opener silhouette. What the photographs don't show you is what happens after dark. More than 40 skyscrapers in this single district perform a coordinated nightly display so massive it's visible from nearly 30 miles away. Not individual buildings running their own loops. A unified, choreographed performance across an entire financial district, reflected in the Huangpu River below, doubling the visual scale for anyone watching from the Bund. Then there's Guangzhou, the Canton Tower, nearly 2,000 feet of twisted lattice steel wrapped in over 330,000 individual LED emitters. Every single node is independently controllable. The tower can display over 10 million color combinations, and its patterns shift in real time using generative algorithms. You're not watching pre-recorded content, you're watching a building think. And finally, Wuhan. Over 500 buildings stretched along 15 miles of the Yangtze River, wired into what engineers call the world's largest synchronized light control project. The facades run coordinated content across 3 entire urban districts simultaneously. And here's the detail that separates Wuhan from every other city on this list. The Yangtze itself becomes the second screen. The river reflects every pixel, every color shift, every animation, doubling the display into the water below. The city didn't just design around the reflection, it engineered for it. Now here's what most people miss when they watch these videos online and assume it's just China showing off. Every single one of these installations is a full-scale engineering system, and the technology behind them is the reason no American city has ever come close. The factory that owns the entire game. Here's something most people never think about. When you see an LED screen, any LED screen, Anywhere in the world, there's a better than 70% chance it was manufactured in China. Not assembled, not packaged, manufactured. From the semiconductor wafer, to the chip packaging, to the driver ICs, to the power supplies, to the finished panel, China controls the entire vertical production chain. Cities like Shenzhen, Dongguan, and Xiamen don't just make LED displays, they are the LED display industry. The raw materials, the fabrication, the engineering, the assembly, it all happens within a few hundred miles of each other. In a supply chain so tightly integrated that a Chinese developer can commission a custom LED facade with a specific pixel pitch, a specific curvature, a specific weatherproofing spec, and have finished panels arriving on site within weeks. Now try to do that from New York. You're not just buying panels anymore, you're importing them. You're paying 30 to 40% more in production costs before the product even leaves the factory floor, because Western manufacturing simply cannot match Chinese economies of scale. Then you're adding international freight, then customs duties, then tariffs that have been climbing steadily for years. Then you're hiring a specialized installation crew that has never worked with facade-scale LED before, because almost nobody in the United States has, because almost nobody in the United States has ever needed to. By the time you've landed the same square foot of LED panel on a Manhattan curtain wall that a Shenzhen developer bolted onto a Futian skyscraper, you've spent 2 to 3 times as much and waited 6 months longer to get it. But the cost gap is only half the problem. The real killer is iteration speed. Chinese manufacturers don't just sell panels off a catalog. They engineer custom solutions for individual buildings, bespoke module sizes, curved mounting brackets, perforated mesh designs that let wind pass through while maintaining pixel density from street level. They prototype, test, refine, and deliver at a pace that makes Western procurement cycles look glacial. A developer in Guangzhou can walk into a factory in Shenzhen, sit with engineers, redesign a panel spec on the spot, and have updated samples within days. A developer in Chicago trying to do the same thing is sending emails across a 14-hour time difference, negotiating through a trade intermediary, and waiting months for revised samples to clear customs, assuming the tariff schedule hasn't changed in the meantime. This is what a supply chain monopoly actually looks like. It's not just that China makes the parts cheaper. It's that China makes the parts faster, closer, and with a level of customization that no outside buyer can access at the same speed or the same price. And when you're outfitting an entire skyline, not one building, not one facade, but hundreds of towers across a city that cost advantage, and that speed advantage compound into something no Western city can financially justify replicating. The math simply doesn't work when you're the customer. It only works when you're the factory. But even if an American city could somehow match the supply chain, there's a second barrier that would stop the project cold before a single panel was ever ordered. The government that designs the night. In every Chinese city, you've just seen Shenzhen, Chongqing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Wuhan. There's a detail most people never hear about. Those synchronized LED skylines weren't the idea of individual building owners. They were mandated by the city government. When a developer applies for planning permission to build a tower in a designated central business district or waterfront zone in China, the LED facade specification isn't a suggestion. It's a condition of approval. The city tells you the pixel pitch, the brightness limits, the color temperature range, the content scheduling windows. The synchronization protocol your system has to be compatible with. You don't get to build a dark glass box in a zone the government has designated as part of the city's nightscape. That's not how the system works. Your building's exterior isn't yours to decide. It belongs to the skyline, and the skyline belongs to the city. But the mandate doesn't stop at the hardware. Chinese municipal governments don't just tell developers to install LEDs, they build and fund the entire synchronization infrastructure behind them. Fiber optic backbone networks connecting every facade in the district to a central control system, dedicated broadcast servers. Municipal lighting centers that act as the neural hub of the entire operation in Chongqing alone. Over 1,000 control terminals manage every illuminated surface in the city. Dedicated content production teams designing the nightly shows, all of it funded as public infrastructure, budgeted the same way a city funds roads, bridges, and water treatment. In Shanghai, the municipality commissioned over 50,000 luminaires across the waterfront and 3 major bridges as a single coordinated project, the largest architectural lighting installation in the history of the company that built it. This isn't decoration. This is urban infrastructure at national scale. Now try to imagine proposing that in an American city. You can't. And it's not because Americans lack ambition. It's because the entire regulatory framework runs in the opposite direction. In the United States, zoning codes are designed to limit visual impact, not maximize it. Brightness caps, light pollution ordinances, billboard restrictions within 1,000 feet of residential zones. Sign regulations that dictate maximum square footage, maximum height, maximum illumination levels, all engineered to prevent exactly the kind of large-scale visual spectacle that Chinese cities mandate by default. In New York, illuminated signs must meet strict light pollution standards, dim during nighttime hours, and comply with content transition rules. In historic districts, materials, colors, and even fonts can be regulated to preserve visual harmony. The law doesn't just fail to encourage LED facades, it actively discourages them. Every layer of American zoning is built to protect private property owners from visual intrusion, which means it's built to prevent the very thing that makes a synchronized skyline possible. This is the core philosophical divide. In China, the building exterior is public infrastructure. In America, it's private property. And you cannot build a coordinated citywide display system on top of a legal framework that treats every facade as an individual owner's personal decision. Even if every developer in Manhattan wanted to install LEDs tomorrow, there is no municipal control system to synchronize them, no government mandate to standardize their specs, and no public funding mechanism to wire them together. And even if both of those barriers disappeared overnight, the supply chain and the regulation, there's still a third problem. Because wrapping a skyscraper in LEDs isn't as simple as bolting screens to a wall. A second building wrapped around the first. Most people look at an LED-covered skyscraper and think someone bolted a screen to the outside of a building. That assumption is wrong by about 10 layers of engineering. What you're actually looking at is a second structure, a fully engineered rain screen facade system mounted on its own independent structural frame, offset from the building's primary curtain wall by a ventilated cavity. The LED modules aren't sitting on the glass, they're hanging on a skeleton built around the glass. You're not looking at a building with a screen attached. You're looking at 2 buildings, one inside the other. And every single layer of that second skin is solving a problem you've probably never thought about. Start with the modules themselves. Each LED pixel unit on these facades is individually sealed to an IP65 rating or higher, meaning it's completely dust-tight and protected against water jets from any direction. These aren't consumer electronics. They're industrial-grade outdoor components rated for 100,000 hours of continuous operation. To put that in perspective, that's over 11 years of running non-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without a single pixel failure. They're built to survive a decade of direct sun, tropical humidity, monsoon rain, salt air, and temperature swings that would destroy any consumer display in a matter of months. But surviving the weather isn't even the hardest engineering challenge. The hardest challenge is wind. At 600 feet, wind loads on a building facade are severe. At 2,000 feet, they're catastrophic. Every mounting bracket, every clip, every structural connection holding those LED modules to the secondary frame has to be engineered to survive sustained typhoon-grade wind speeds, the kind of forces that would strip conventional cladding off a building like peeling paint. The solution is counterintuitive. Instead of sealing the facade into a solid wall, engineers design the LED skin as a perforated or mesh-style surface, open enough to let wind pass straight through the gaps between modules, dramatically reducing the pressure differential that causes panels to rip free. From 100 feet away at street level, your eye reads a seamless screen. But up close, the facade is full of precisely calculated openings that turn a wall into a wind filter. The display looks solid. The physics say otherwise. Then there's the heat problem. LED modules generate enormous thermal loads at facade scale. Hundreds of thousands of individual light sources, all running simultaneously, all producing waste heat that has nowhere to go, trapped against the exterior of a sealed building in direct sunlight. Without active thermal management, pixel degradation accelerates, color accuracy drifts, and module lifespan collapses. The solution is that ventilated cavity between the LED skin and the building's curtain wall. It's not dead air space. It's an engineered thermal buffer in some cases, supported by dedicated cooling fans, aluminum fin heat sinks, and natural convection channels designed to pull hot air upward and out through exhaust vents at the top of each section. On the most advanced towers, this amounts to a dedicated HVAC layer built exclusively for the facade, completely separate from the building's interior climate system. And all of it, every module, every thermal sensor, every brightness level feeds into the building management system. Millions of individual pixels controlled from a single server. Ambient light sensors adjusting brightness in real time based on daylight conditions. Diagnostic software monitoring individual module health across the entire facade. Broadcast quality video content rendered and distributed at a resolution that would rival any television studio, except the screen is the size of a skyscraper. You're not looking at signage. You're looking at a live broadcast infrastructure fused into the architecture of a building. And that engineering doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists because of a fourth and final reason, one that explains not just how these facades work, but why China builds them at all. The skyline that speaks for the nation. Everything you've heard so far, the supply chain, the regulations, the engineering, explains how China builds LED skylines. This section explains why. On October 1st, every year, China celebrates National Day. And when the sun goes down, something happens that has no equivalent anywhere else on Earth. From Beijing to Shanghai, from Shenzhen to Chongqing, from Guangzhou to Harbin, to Urumqi cities, spanning thousands of miles in every direction, simultaneously light up their skylines with coordinated content. Building facades display the Chinese national flag. Slogans scroll across towers reading "I love you, China" and "Long live the motherland." Fireworks animations cascade down the sides of financial districts. The entire visible surface of urban China becomes a single synchronized broadcast, delivered not through television, not through the internet, but through the physical architecture of the country itself. This is not entertainment. This is national communication. And it doesn't just happen on National Day, Chinese New Year, the anniversary of the founding of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, the Asian Games, diplomatic summits, military anniversaries. Every major national moment is accompanied by a skyline-scale broadcast, coordinated across dozens of cities at once. The content is produced by dedicated teams, approved through official channels, and delivered through the same municipal control infrastructure that manages the nightly shows year-round. The building facade isn't advertising space. It isn't decoration. It's a broadcast medium, and the message it carries is decided at the level of the state, not the landlord. Think about what that requires. Not just the LEDs, not just the engineering, not just the government mandates. It requires a society that has collectively decided that the exterior of a building is not a private surface, that the skyline belongs to the public, that what a city looks like at night is a matter of national identity, not individual taste. It requires a political system where telling a developer what their building's facade must display is as routine as telling them how many fire exits they need. It requires an entire country to agree or at least to accept that the skyline is a canvas and the painter is the nation. Now ask yourself what it would take to replicate that in the United States. You'd need to convince every private developer in a financial district to surrender control of their building's exterior to a city government. You'd need to rewrite zoning codes that were specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of centralized visual control. You'd need municipal funding for synchronization infrastructure that no city council has ever budgeted for. You'd need federal coordination across state lines. You'd need to overcome First Amendment challenges about compelled speech on private property. And you'd need all of this to happen simultaneously, in a country where the very idea of the government controlling what a building looks like is philosophically incompatible with how Americans think about property, expression, and the role of the state. It's not that America can't build LED facades. It's that America can't build the system that makes LED facades mean something at national scale. The technology is available, the will is not. And that difference is not a technical gap, it's a civilizational one. And if that sounds like an indictment of America, it's not, because the glass box was never a failure. The glass box was never a failure. Here's the part of this story that most people get wrong. America's plain glass skyscrapers aren't the result of inferior technology. They aren't a sign that the United States fell behind. The US has the engineering talent, the capital markets, and the technical knowledge to do everything China does on a facade. American firms designed several of the Chinese towers you just heard about. American architects drew the blueprints. American structural engineers consulted on the wind load calculations. The capability was never the problem. The philosophy was, in America, a building is a private asset. Its exterior is the developer's decision shaped by cost efficiency, tenant expectations, brand identity, and a zoning system that was designed from the ground up to limit visual disruption, not encourage it. Glass curtain walls became the default American facade, not because they're boring, but because they're elegant, efficient, and legally frictionless. No content to regulate. No synchronization systems to fund. No municipal broadcast infrastructure to build and maintain. No government agency dictating what your building has to display on a Tuesday night in October. The American skyscraper was designed to blend into the skyline, to reflect the sky, the street, the city around it, to disappear. The Chinese skyscraper was designed to do the opposite, to broadcast, to announce, to perform. And neither approach is objectively better. They're answers to two entirely different questions. America asks, what does this building need to do for its owner? China asks, what does this building need to say for its city? One treats architecture as private investment. The other treats it as public expression. One optimizes for the balance sheet. The other optimizes for the skyline. And when you understand that the divergence isn't about LEDs or glass or technology at all, it's about what a society believes a building is for, then the gap between the two skylines stops looking like a competition and starts looking like a mirror. Two civilizations building exactly what their values demand, one in silence, one in light. And that difference, once you see it, changes how you look at every skyline for the rest of your life. Visible from space. So now you know. 4 reasons, not 4 opinions, 4 structural realities that separate the brightest skylines on Earth from the darkest. China manufactures 80% of the world's LED display panels, controlling the entire vertical supply chain, from semiconductor wafer to finished module, making facade-scale displays a rounding error on a construction budget that would bankrupt a Western developer before the first panel cleared customs. Chinese city governments mandate LED specifications in planning permissions the same way they mandate fire exits, and then fund the synchronization infrastructure, the fiber optic backbone, and the dedicated content teams as public works, budgeted alongside roads and bridges. Every facade is an engineering system unto itself. A ventilated rain screen second skin with individually sealed pixel modules rated for over 100,000 hours of continuous outdoor operation, wind load tested to typhoon standards, thermally managed through dedicated cooling layers, and wired into a building management system that controls millions of pixels from a single server at broadcast quality in real time. And behind all of it sits a deliberate national doctrine that treats the skyline as a form of public communication, a nightly statement broadcast simultaneously across thousands of synchronized towers in dozens of cities, carrying national content approved at the level of the state. No American city has the supply chain to source it. No American city has the regulatory framework to mandate it. No American city has the engineering pipeline to build it at scale. And no American city has the collective will to even attempt it, not because the technology doesn't exist, but because the United States treats buildings as private assets and China treats them as public statements. And that difference expressed in light and pixels every single night across the largest urban landscape on Earth is visible from space.